What if healing isn't about fixing what's broken, but about remembering what's already encoded within you? And what if your DNA isn't static, but intelligent, responsive, and constantly listening to how you live, feel, and perceive the world? Welcome to Let's Get Real to Heal, a space where we explore healing beyond surface solutions, beyond symptom management, and into the deeper intelligence of the human system. I'm Dr. Joelle Samaha, researcher in the philosophy of health and well-being, integrative health and life coach, and founder of PhiloLife Wellbeing Education Center. My work bridges philosophy, neuroscience, emotional healing, and embodied practices, asking not just how we heal, but what healing truly means. Today's conversation is with Dr. Carol Talbot, a visionary leader in human potential, consciousness studies, and the evolution of intelligence. Carol holds a PhD in Quantum Morphogenetic Physics and is the author of several groundbreaking books, including Multidimensional Intelligence. Dr. Carol, it's an honor to have you here. And I'm so excited about our conversation because I've had the opportunity to have a few conversations on the side when we met at your house last Sunday when I discovered your new book. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Your book is out. I think I've just asked you, was it December?
It was December, and what's so incredible really is I never expected to be publishing 2 books in 1 year. I have long gaps between books, and I mean long gaps like 8 to 10 years. So when I published the previous one, which was based on my thesis, Reimagine You, that was earlier in the year, right at the beginning. I had no intention. It was the furthest from my mind of writing another book. It's like, nope, done and dusted. And I had a conversation with a friend, I think it was the end of February. And you know those conversations where little seeds are planted? And a seed was planted and I couldn't sleep that night. And I've got over that doing your best to sleep when you can't. I get up and do something. And so that night I got up and I mapped out the whole of multidimensional intelligence as a book. And so I had the structure, and then I used most of Ramadan to write the first draft, and then the next draft, the next draft, the next draft, and then it published in December. What's also been incredible is I thought I was writing a book. And as you know, it's turned into a whole field and architecture with the multidimensional field scans, the entrainment audio, the mastery frequency mapping. So it's turned into a whole new intelligence being architectured.
Exactly. And I think when I started reading your book, I was wondering, is it about the emotional quotient? Is it about EQ, about SQ, about IQ? And then I've realized that we're speaking about something different. So
Yes.
Can you introduce the audience to what multidimensional intelligence is?
Yes, the kind of definition that I like to give is it's really how we perceive, operate, and interact beyond linear thinking, the linear thinking being the IQ, the EQ. So it's beyond linear thinking across time, space, matter, energy, frequency, and consciousness. So there's a lovely metaphor that I like to share because that's a lot to unpack. Do you have a Netflix account?
Yes.
Okay, most people do. And if you want to stream or watch anything on Netflix, series, episodes, movies, then you set up an account with your email address, you have a password, and then you log in and you can watch anything you like, anytime you like on Netflix. What if there's a program, though, that you want to watch and it's not streaming on Netflix? Then you need to set up another account, maybe on Apple or Prime or one of the other streaming platforms, and log in again to watch what you want to watch. So instead of entertainment, switch that streaming service for this invisible internet, like a quantum field or an information field. And the good news here is, no, you don't need to set up an account. You're already connected. You do not need a password. You are already connected. The challenge, though, with the invisible internet, with this quantum field, is most people have a glitchy connection. So they get examples and insights occasionally, like those moments of synchronicity, or those moments when you have that flash of an idea, or you think of somebody and they call literally within moments. So that's kind of highlights that most of us have a glitchy connection. So multidimensional intelligence is upgrading the connection to this information field, which means innovation, creativity, ideas are on tap. So it's different from most other fields where you are accessing different states, because we all access different states. You go to a meditation, you go to a retreat, you go to an experience, or you have a session of some therapy or ology, and you access different information and different states. The problem and challenge there is you access it, but you're not stabilizing that frequency, that signal, so it becomes your new operating system. This is where multidimensional intelligence starts opening the door to new possibilities, not just to access higher states of consciousness and access beyond the 5 senses, the additional senses, but to really start operating your whole life from a different frequency.
Yeah, reading your book, I've realized that the multidimensional intelligence is a wide concept that is in a way has a process. It's a process, it's an activation, it's a reconnection. But at the same time, what really kind of was interesting is the DNA approach to it. And when we spoke about doing this episode of Let's Get Real to Heal, I was basically focusing on the fact that for people who are healing, for people who think that their DNA has an inner coding that is already fixed genetically, whether it is for disease, whether it is for characteristics, etc. And they think that their health is predetermined by the DNA blueprint. And when I've read your book and I've realized that your approach to the DNA itself is so different, and it is interactive with the multidimensional intelligence. So this is where the questions came in. Like, do we have a role in activating that multidimensional aspect that is written in everybody's DNA according to your approach to the DNA itself? So let's start step by step by defining DNA when it comes to the multidimensional intelligence approach.
So from a multidimensional intelligence perspective, your DNA is a transmitter and receiver of consciousness. The fact is, though, there's a lot of distortions in our DNA. So going back to what you said, most people perceive their DNA as their coding, their genetics that's responsible for their eye color, skin color, things like that. So the idea I give is that it's like a treasure chest and we're given a key. But when we unlock the treasure chest, we find it only unlocks a very small portion of our DNA. The rest is what mainstream science calls junk DNA. I prefer to call it intron DNA because the word intron means potential and possibility, and it is. So once we start exploring DNA from beyond genetics, beyond skin color, hair color, eye color, then you really open the gateway. As I said, one of the challenges of DNA and the stream of consciousness that should be available to us is that there's a lot of distortions in our DNA. And a lot of the distortions have come about over millennia, really. If you understand our true cosmic history, you realize that we've been seriously tampered with. However, right now, though, our DNA is further being compromised by the additives in our food and our water supply. And I say food loosely because if you go to a supermarket and you look at tins and packets, which make up the majority of most supermarkets, the fruit and vegetable section is the minuter section. And even the fruit and vegetables, as we know now, has been tainted seriously. Can we actually call what we're eating food? And so this is what I started to explore, and it was the PhD was my thesis PhD, which was bioregenesis of the DNA blueprint through source feeding. So let me just unpack that a little and go back into DNA. Your DNA, as I said, is a transmitter and receiver of consciousness. Sadly, about 90% of the stream of consciousness that should be available to us is switched off, like a dimmer switch. It's sort of turned down to the faintest glow, which is the reason we don't remember our multidimensional nature. So think of DNA like a film strip. And if you have a film strip, when light hits the film strip, it projects what's on the film strip onto an external screen. But if there's scratches and glitches on your film strip, then what you get is a very scratchy, glitchy movie. Now, you don't yell at the movie and say, "Oh, tidy yourself up." You go and tidy up the film strip. Well, DNA is like that. When consciousness hits DNA, if there's distortions in your DNA, then what gets projected as your outer holographic reality has glitches in it. Trauma, negative emotions, difficult situations, difficult experiences. So there's glitches in your outer experience. So it would make sense then that if you tidy up your DNA, as consciousness comes in, what then gets projected onto your outer reality is tidied up. So my book, Reimagine You, Bioregenesis of the DNA Blueprint Through Source Feeding, bit of a mouthful there. I wanted to go beyond biohacking. You know, biohacking looks at ways to restore your body, anti-aging, longevity, healing, through devices, through supplements. And most people, let's face it, have got a cupboard full of supplements, which, as I share from my research, many are dubious whether they actually work.
Exactly.
You know, so you're spending a hell of a lot of money on things that may not work. So being the person that I am, that likes to do things a little bit differently, I took a much more drastic approach, which was source feeding. Source feeding is the breatharian path and finding other ways to nourish your body. And look, we know that you get vitamin D and K from the sun.
Correct.
My question was, can you get other nutrients in different ways? And here's the other thing. In terms of anti-aging and longevity, our cells need to repair the body and to keep it active, it needs something called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Now, when I ask people, why do you eat? Most people say, well, I need to eat for energy.
I have to eat, yeah.
Well, not strictly true, because ATP is the fuel of the cells. But when you eat food that's full of additives, your body has to squeeze a minute drop of ATP out of the food that you eat. And then that ATP, that energy for the cells to repair the body, is used to deal with the additives in the food and the water. So you're not actually having time or any ATP left over to repair the body and repair your system, which is what it's meant to do. So as I said, I went a drastic route, and this is not a path for everybody. You need to be able to hold a certain frequency. You have to be a frequency match, else you can't hold it. It's not fasting. Fasting is not sustainable long term. A lot of people do intermittent fasting. That's also great. And that is more sustainable long term. What I do, I'm what's called a level 3 breatharian, or pranic living, or source feeding, which means I do eat, but I eat occasionally. And it means I don't need to eat. My body can sustain itself. So a lot of people are going to say, hey, that's not possible. You need protein to build muscle. You need...
Or do you have deficiencies after following such a way of living?
All I can say is one of my hobbies is aerial hoop, the performing arts.
Yeah, I've seen a few videos of you. Amazing.
You need quite a lot of muscle to even just pull yourself up.
Yes.
So I'm not saying I perfected the breatharian path, but I am over 2 years in. Was it challenging to make that switch? Yes, I went in a dark room for 9 days, 9 nights. It was a breatharian program. However, when I came out of that experience, I did start eating again, but very lightly. So I went on another experience where we did dry fasting, where there's no food, no water, 24/7 for 3-4 days. And
Wow,
then,
that's tough.
well, your mouth is dry as a bone.
Exactly.
When they suggest Vipassana would be a good idea, it's necessary. You can't speak. However, we had a strict protocol for 2 months, no chewing. So it was liquids only, diluted juice, diluted soup, to rest this muscle and also to deprogram. Because think also that many of us eat because it's breakfast time, it's lunch time, it's dinner time, not because we're necessarily hungry.
It's the habit.
And as a level 3, what's classed a level 3 breatharian, I do eat on occasion. I do like to have a nibble here and there, but it's predominantly diluted juices, water, cup of tea here and there. I'm still British and like a cup of tea. The fact, though, is I do not have the need for food, and that's the difference. So the conditioning has been switched off, and that's a large program to switch off. Now, my purpose of that, and this first book last year answers, and it's actually my third book, answers the question, is it possible to repair your DNA and start accessing higher states of consciousness and beyond the 5 senses? That was to answer that question.
All right, so you took the personal route
Yes.
to try and experiment.
And a drastic approach and a drastic path that is not for everybody. Are there other paths? But as I said, my life has been fascinated by the masters, the superhumans, the gurus who demonstrate all sorts of phenomena. My question is, if they can do it, can I? So the first book was to answer the question, is it possible to repair the DNA and start accessing higher states of consciousness and beyond the 5 senses? The second book on multidimensional intelligence is, well, what happens if you do? What starts to open up when you start to not only access higher states of consciousness, to stabilize them? And that is the reason that I said I thought I was writing a book at the beginning of last year on multidimensional intelligence. However, it's opened up to be a whole field that's becoming architectured on your sort of lived reality. So
and what is
stunned me.
Exactly, it is stunning. And what amazes me as well is the way of approaching DNA itself as being a way of reading a blueprint, but at the same time, it is affected, as you mentioned in the chapter 4, by sound, by light, and by coherence. And you mentioned these 3 aspects as possibilities to affect the DNA and make changes, as in it emits and it receives as well.
Yes.
So based on this, I would wonder, because nowadays it's very trendy to see people going for these DNA analysis and genetic analysis. So I wonder if these readings, genetic readings, are just temporary in a way that it could be right now their situation, how they are affected by light, sound, coherence, emotions, and that it could change automatically every few months, every few days. I don't know, what's your input on this?
Yes, and as I shared before, most people will access higher states of consciousness. However, they cannot stabilize them, to operate from them on a regular basis. So for example, if you have a plant medicine experience, you are literally catapulted into altered states and you see different things, you experience different things, and you can't hold it. When you calm down from that plant medicine experience, you come back to your, what I call baseline signature frequency, the playground that you normally play in, because we are all energetic beings. Everything in this universe is made up of energy, oscillating and vibrating at specific frequencies. So you have what I call a baseline signature frequency. It's not one frequency, it's a mishmash. However, it's at a particular level, which means I liken it to a playground. Because we're electromagnetic beings, it magnetizes certain things into your playground, certain emotions, certain people, certain situations, certain drama, even certain trauma. Now, those traumas and experience may not be an exact match, but they'll be resonant enough.
Aligning.
To come into your field. So what I find is people want to move, they want to shift, and they don't know how. And so we've been taught that, it's just go for a DNA analysis, or it's positive thinking, or it's clear your emotions. Those are all surface level. We have to go a little bit deeper and understand the architecture, the structure of our lived reality. And what I find is, just for a moment, imagine you are walking around in complete darkness. So I shared that I went in to a 9-day, 9-night darkroom experience, pitch black. So dark that if you put your hand in front of your face, you can't see it. However, strange things happen when you spend extended times in darkness. It actually also starts to heal up your DNA because you release massive amounts of melatonin. So we know melatonin is the neurotransmitter that helps you sleep, but it also is responsible for DNA repair. But also a lot of other things happen. The boundaries of light and dark, fullness and hunger, possible and impossible, they start to dissolve. And you see reality in a different way. But for most people, it's like being in that dark room, that they are stumbling around. They find that in life, they're tripping up over the same wires, the same patterns. And usually we get to a certain age where we think, this has happened before.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought I was going into a different relationship and actually it's the same one. Or this situation has happened before in my career. So they're starting to see the patterns emerge. So with some of the work that I do, particularly the multidimensional field scans, they show the architecture, the structure of your lived reality. In other words, they switch on the light. So you begin to see what's tripping you up, the wires, the layout of the room. Now, of course, then you have the opportunity to switch the light off. But even if you switch the light off, you still know what's tripping you up. And you still know what you're bumping into. Or you can start moving the wires or start restructuring the room to meet you where you want to be.
Yeah, because patterns are usually what happens in our life and causes us distress or dis-ease.
Yes.
And uncovering them or wanting to understand ourselves more is the way to reach a point of feeling safe within our own body, which you speak about a lot when you speak about healing through the DNA and through the multidimensional intelligence. So on those lines, if we try to understand the instinct we all have, which is survival, and since we have that instinct and the mind is always searching for danger around us, so we are wired for stress. But nowadays, with the way we live, looking at how we live in terms of food, as you just mentioned, in terms of stress, in terms of all these components, we are maybe more prone to activating certain disease that we have the blueprint on the DNA. So this is why in certain families, they have like a cancer predisposition, but it doesn't appear in everybody, in every member of the family. So in your own opinion, how does the DNA blueprint and the conscious activation of that multidimensional can shift your health and make you kind of healthier?
So it goes back to, as I said, we operate from a baseline signature frequency. In other words, we operate in a particular playground that will allow certain dis-eases and different levels of consciousness, different people, different drama. So the question here is, if this is your baseline signature frequency, how can you move to a different baseline signature frequency, a different playground where those people, those situations, those dramas, that cannot cannot get there. That level of consciousness, when you stabilize it, cannot be a resonant match in that frequency. So that's where we look at stabilizing where you're at. And you're quite right with stress. And that most people think, oh, positive thinking, clearing the negative emotions is enough. And it's not, because we've been conditioned and programmed in specific ways. So my own natural curiosity about how come people stay stuck here? How can we move them there quicker? So first of all, as I said, the multidimensional field scans are a mirror. They're a reflection of your multidimensional architecture. So they show you the wires, the structure, even, I'm not a medical medium, but the multidimensional field scans will show the architecture of a disease, maybe the karmic patterns, the ancestral loops, the mental loops and the energetic signature that you operate from that would have contributed to that physical dis-ease or those negative emotions. So how do I get people from here to here? So I call it the mastery mapping frequency container, but I also wanted to create some other tools and techniques that shift people quicker. So this is when I developed the entrainment series, which includes breath, but also is audio to support people. And in the entrainment series, there's 4 tracks. They're each about 20 minutes long, and they need to be in this order. You mentioned coherence. It's the first port of call. So they go coherence, resonance, alignment, embodiment. Coherence is the first port of call because it's getting everything aligned and stable internally. Your thoughts, your emotions, your nervous system, your stress levels.
Yeah,
this is where, basic. As I said, people will go to a meditation, a sound healing, and it'll be great. They feel good afterwards because they've stabilized their system. But they cannot stabilize it enough for it to be their operating pattern. I was doing a group experience yesterday evening, and I asked people to hold a joyful experience in their mind for 20 seconds, to close their eyes and think of something joyful.
For 20 minutes.
Not even 20 minutes, 20 seconds.
20 seconds?
20 seconds. It's not long.
No.
And when I asked them to open their eyes and said, could you hold that for 20 seconds? No. Busy mind syndrome. What are we doing this for? How long is this? Is it nearly done? Or their mind goes in different directions. Now, if you can ask people to do that for 20 seconds and they cannot, when they're quiet, when they're still and they've got their eyes closed, do you think they've got a hope of doing it when we're bombarded with noise, stress, distractions? You go to a shopping mall, you go in, every single store is playing different music, different tracks. We're bombarded.
Exactly.
Plus, we are conditioned and programmed from birth with a set of beliefs, sent to school, taught a history that may or may not be true. But we are conditioned that when people say, how are you doing? We go, oh, I'm good. I'm really busy. That busy is good.
The task list is the way.
Exactly. It's like, oh, I've got this appointment, that appointment, I'm busy. And that's perceived as good. So if you say, well, actually, I'm pretty chilled, I haven't got much on at the moment, people would think, oh. So we're not actually encouraged to rest our nervous system. And when I do the multidimensional field scans, one of the key insights that comes up for virtually everyone is rest as repair.
That's so beautiful, so necessary. You need to repeat it, Carol, because it's the problem of everyone, including myself.
Exactly. Rest as repair. Yet most people, if we have a little afternoon snooze or think, oh, I need to sleep early, we feel guilty.
Yes.
Because we feel we should be doing something. Work harder, work smarter.
Agree.
That's what's been drilled in.
And that's what's wiring us.
But the challenge is that doesn't create a stable signal. because that means what you are sending out into the world as your baseline signature frequency is here, there, everywhere.
Yeah.
And so resonance cannot come in. The universe cannot echo back that which you want. You wonder why you're not materializing or manifesting what you want. It's because you cannot hold a coherent signal.
That means even if the messages are sent, you won't receive, you won't see them.
Exactly. It's so coherence answers the question when you're not happy with what's happening in your life. The first question to ask is my signal stable? And one of the key things or areas that I ask when I'm mentoring and working with clients on the mapping frequency technology is awareness. Notice who and what triggers you. And one of my clients, who I rate as a high level of consciousness, and noticing the challenges in materializing and manifesting what she desires, what I do goes beyond desire. Because as I said, we want to stabilize that operating signal. But in that week of observation, she said, I had no idea I had so many negative thoughts. So that answers the question that you need to work on coherence. So when I encourage people to use the coherence audio, it's to calm down their nervous system. And I've seen shifts and changes almost instantly, in terms of often people manifest stress as skin disorders and things like that, and to calm that down almost instantly when they go into coherence, but also to stabilize that signal. The next level is resonance, because you want to be in rapport with your outer environment, with opportunities, with new choice points, people, decisions. So coherence has to come first. Resonance is second, and when you get the two, alignment comes in and you start locking in a new identity.
And then the magic begins.
Well, embodiment comes in. You start operating from a higher level of consciousness and frequency, which means, going back to what I said earlier, your connection to the invisible internet upgrades, which means it's not sporadic, those synchronicities, those getting an idea for a book or for different technology, instant. That's when the magic starts. And I have been my socks are blown off, basically. I am just so wowed myself because I've been a seeker and searcher all my life. I wanted to activate the higher senses, to be psychic, to be this, to be that. And I had friends who were psychic and said, did you see this? Did you hear that? And I go, no. Yeah. I even went on a month-long program to learn to walk on water. I sank every time. Yeah. But as you know, I am a master firewalk instructor, so I do teach people to do the impossible. And actually, those experiences are wonderful because, again, walking on fire is something we've been told and taught is impossible.
Yeah, so I've done that, and you're right.
Yeah, so when you do walk across burning hot coals, it creates new neurological connections, but also begs the question, if I can do that, what else can I do in my life? So it opens the door to new possibilities. Now, you mentioned healing and emotions, and the old model has been going back to traumatic experiences in the past, reliving them, because you can't actually go back to the past. There is only the now, the present moment. And so what happens is you often bring past experiences and represent them in the present, sometimes making it worse and keeping it active in your lived reality. And this is also where the multidimensional field scans act like an activation, because they're a mirror of that which is already there. And it's like, if you've seen the view from the top of the mountain, you've seen it. You can't forget it. It's in your field. So they wake things up for you. So rather than going back past, present, future, I like to flip that around. And so the work that I do is very future-based and present-based. Because if you have a future timeline that you want to work from, or you want to bring in closer, and you're working towards that playground of higher frequencies, then you start to begin to have a vision. And think of it like making a movie. The movie has a story. Then the characters are given a backstory.
Correct.
So you know what you want to achieve. Then it's bringing that back to the present and asking yourself, what's the story that's going to support me now and in the future? Because honestly, I found I don't need to be psychic or a clairvoyant to know where people will be in 1 year's time or 5 years' time when they start telling me their story.
Yeah, that's an indication.
So either you let them perpetuate that story and they're going to stay in the same loop. But the moment you change the identity, the part that you want to play, then you're changing your present and you're changing your trajectory. You start attracting, resonating different things from the outer world. So this is the playground that I operate with.
Especially for healing.
And especially for healing, because I see people, in all fields, even speakers, who share their story with the audience, but they're just bringing it to life. I was brought up like this, I had that drama, that story, and they're sharing it every single day. It's active in their field. Change your identity, change your story, it changes your identity. That changes the signal that you're emitting. It
unlocks your potential.
It unlocks your potential. So instead of past, present, future, it's time to go future, present, and create a backstory that supports you now and in the future.
Reframe.
It's
reframe
a complete
your past.
reframe, and we both come from an NLP background, and it's also a pattern interrupt. So it's a beautiful way of shifting. And I've also learnt from my own experience, as we know from an NLP perspective, language is so important. The language that we use to ourselves from at different times in terms of creating our reality and shifting people's language. However, the work that I do now, particularly in creating and mirroring the multidimensional field scans, is pre-language. So when people say, how do I do this? Because as you know, I don't do them live, and you've experienced a multidimensional field scan. You fill in a form, I get your permission, has to have permission. But I go into a particular state, and very quickly I'm able to mirror what's in your field. But it comes in a pre-language form, not through pictures, not through sounds, because that means I would translate them through my perception, through my lens. So I'm very clear that this is not through my lens, it's pre-language. And what takes me the time is to translate that into words and specific words that will also activate people. So the book on multidimensional intelligence is already coded in itself, but I want to make sure that the scans get coded. So with the pre-language, I don't see pictures, don't hear sounds. It's almost like if you get a book, it takes time to read it from start to finish. But imagine getting the whole book as a zip file, but also not just as a zip file, understanding it. And if you've ever met anybody who's had a near-death experience, they'll say they are in a space and place where they can ask any question they want, and they immediately understand everything and anything instantly. It's like, tell me how quantum mechanics works. Boof, they understand everything there is to know about quantum mechanics. Their challenge for people who've had NDEs, near-death experiences, is when they come back, how do they explain it and express it to someone else in language?
It's
So it's a knowing.
It is
How
a
beautiful
knowing.
is that?
It is beautiful because it's an experience. It's an experience, as if you touch a glimpse of what it is, but you're not able to translate it. It's beyond words. And I think healing
Yes, beyond words.
is beyond words. We can't explain it. Sometimes
Instant remission.
It's just like I discover a pattern, I put my finger on it, and the moment the veil is removed, I instantly feel the healing in my body.
Yes.
And this is where I know something has shifted. I can't put my finger on it, but I know it has shifted. So this is why I think it's more about learning to be wired for healing. And for that, you need to activate your consciousness.
Yes.
To be able to know what's going on within you.
Not just activate it, stabilize it.
And that was my question,
coherence.
because I've been listening all through and I'm like, interesting. So if my DNA is affected by sounds, I can choose the right sounds to hear. If it is affected by light, then I have to question how much am I exposed to light, etc. If it is about breath work, then I can figure out what exercises I can do with breath work. But with coherence, like even with people who do meditate continuously, I do that and I try to continuously put myself in a state of coherence. But the question is how to maintain it. That's the most difficult. Most of us have experienced meditation or those glimpses, but we find it difficult not to be triggered at some point when you have kids around you, when you have people who do press the button that they should not press. And then you're like, I've been working on it and now it's just, I'm out of it, and I need to rewire myself into it. So how do you keep it stable?
And isn't that the beauty, though, of being triggered and realizing that when you're triggered, if you see something in other people, this is perception, is projection. If you see something in another person, anger, jealousy, greed, and you know it's there, but you're not triggered by it, then it's fine. But when you get triggered, that's a beautiful way to start learning and growing and evolving. Because there's a beautiful book by Gary Renard called The Disappearance of the Universe, and it said there's nothing out there, it's all you. Therefore, when somebody triggers you, they're doing it for you to start recognizing, hold up the mirror, of that which is in you. Easier said than done, because sometimes it's not always obvious what they're mirroring back. But when you can grasp what they're mirroring back, then there's huge potential for learning, growth, and evolution, which means that trigger doesn't matter anymore. That person may do exactly the same, that yesterday it triggered you, but once you got the learning, it's flat. It doesn't need to trigger you anymore.
It's the knowing.
And that's your indication that you're starting to stabilize. And as I said, with the coherence, this is the reason that I created a specific breathwork sequence. I've been doing holotropic breathwork sessions for people for a long, long time, but I wanted to create something different that prepares the system to receive the frequencies that are on the audios that I've created. Because it's not just one frequency, there's also inaudible subliminals behind them as well. And so the breathwork sequence, it's 3 different breath sequences. The first is 5 minutes to expand the energy field. The second is to clear the emotions and the dregs, so it's a little bit more of an active breathing technique. It's 9-10 minutes, that's all. And then the third is to experience stillness. Then I put on the coherence audio and the body absorbs it, and therefore it can stabilize it for longer.
So I think health prevention is more about being able to be in that coherence zone as much as we can, very gently. I mean, I don't think we will jump into a state of full coherence. It needs work. It needs introspection. It needs...
Hey, life throws curveballs.
Yeah, that's why this podcast was supposed to be last week. And I called you and I was like, I'm not sure. I mean, life has thrown a few stones here and there. I need to process. Maybe it's better to... I mean, this is what life is. And I liked that day that you spoke about the fact that silence is sometimes the key.
Totally. And we dismiss silence, stillness, solitude and stasis. I believe in this day and age, they've become a necessity, but the fact is people are in an addiction to noise. The people who want the music on the whole time, the people who want the television on in the background the whole time. We've become addicted, and it disturbs our nervous system. And remember, when your nervous system is disturbed, that's the frequency that you're emitting. That's the playground that you're playing in. That's the echo that comes back in terms of the experiences, the drama, the emotions, the situations, the people that you experience. So if you are serious about wanting to upgrade, that connection to this invisible internet, if you are serious about your own growth, this is why the masters always went into caves and long periods of stillness and solitude. And people think it's impractical in this day and age, and it maybe is, to go into a cave or for long periods of time. Even those short bursts of 20 minutes can make a big difference of not driving like, a reckless driver to get to your meditating, and then it's back to driving in traffic again. It's how do you make that your stabilized frequency? Then you will start to see the changes in your world, not just through positive thinking or desire.
And that's
we are
why,
energetic beings.
Exactly. We are energetic beings. Healing is a process. Healing is a choice as well, and it can't be passive. We have to be active in our own process of healing.
That's also the key with all my work, is to make you sovereign. Not that you're saying, Carol, do I need this?
Nobody
Carol, do
can
I
do
need
it
that?
for you.
It's now you know and understand. Coherence comes first, resonance, alignment, embodiment. And you've got some ways to get there. The multidimensional field scans can show you what's tripping you up. That starts an activation. But you are a sovereign being. You always have a choice. And I also
choice, that's the word,
like
right?
the fact that, both of us are involved in ologies and therapies and work that's do with and not do to. Not fix me.
It's impossible.
Let's work
This
together.
is why the
Let's
main
support.
message is that healing is a choice. And for that, I would have loved to continue this discussion.
We can go for
Yeah,
hours.
I know, it's amazing.
There'll be
I
a
love
part
it.
2.
But then, since we really have to wrap up the episode, I want you to just give a direct message to the audience, to the followers, to my followers who are always looking for ways to heal, to accelerate their healing, etc. What would be the message that you would like to give them directly? And your camera is there.
So the masters, the superhumans, the gurus, they showed us what's possible. It's time for us to remember. And you remember through stabilizing your signature frequency. So look at your outside world. It's a mirror for the frequency that you are emitting. If you're really wanting to create shifts and changes, stabilize a higher operating frequency, then you're connected to this fantastic invisible internet.
Thank you, Carol.
My pleasure. Thank you.
It was an honor, and it is an honor. And I would love to invite you again on the podcast, maybe in a while, to speak about a different part of your book as well. So thank you for coming, and I hope the audience enjoyed.
I hope so too. Thank you.